The clinic. Maria Delgado stood outside the St. Vincent's Alternative Medical Centre, staring at the looming building. It was nothing like a typical clinic. The exterior was cold steel and glass, stretching upwards like an angular beast. No sign of warmth, no sign of life. Her body ached, but not just from the chronic pain that had brought her here. There was a weight in her chest, a sense that something was fundamentally wrong. But she couldn't afford to let paranoia stop her now. After months of failed treatments, every other door had slammed shut in her face. Mainstream doctors had written her off as a lost cause, giving her nothing but shrugs and dismissals. She hadn't expected her condition to rob her of her dignity, but here she was standing before this place because some nameless online forum had claimed Dr. Vanessa Crowe could cure what others couldn't. "Hope's a goddamn liar," Maria muttered to herself, stepping toward the entrance. The automatic doors slid open with a hiss, and the air inside hit her like a damp, stifling wave. She paused, frowning. The scent was off, not antiseptic, not clean. It was a strange mix of sweetness and decay, like something organic rotting just out of sight. The receptionist behind the front desk barely looked up as Maria approached. Her skin had a pallor to it, lips an unnatural shade of pink that contrasted sharply with the empty hollowness of her eyes. "Miss Delgado?" the receptionist asked in a monotone, looking up only briefly from her screen. "Yeah," Maria replied, her voice hoarse. "I have an appointment with Dr. Crowe." The receptionist's lips twitched into a ghost of a smile. "Dr. Crowe is ready for you. Down the hall, last door on the right." Maria nodded, but felt a pulse of unease tighten in her gut. The place was too quiet, too sterile, yet there was an underlying sickness here. She didn't want to turn around, didn't want to leave, not without at least giving it a try. She walked down the dimly lit corridor, each step feeling heavier than the last. Patients sat in the waiting area to her left, but something about them seemed off. Their heads hung low, eyes vacant, bodies still. It wasn't the usual tired lethargy of hospital patients. It was as if the life had been drained from them, leaving behind shells that merely mimicked breathing. Her hands trembled as she reached for the door handle at the end of the hall. Inside, Dr. Vanessa Crowe stood waiting. "Ms. Delgado?" Crowe greeted her with an unnerving smile. "Please come in." The first session had been simple. Crowe's methods were unconventional, to say the least, but Maria had agreed to the tests. At this point, it was either that or another dead-end doctor telling her it was all in her head. Crowe was an enigma, sharp-eyed, every movement calculated, her polished appearance almost clinical in itself. She'd outlined Maria's treatment plan without flinching, without blinking, her gaze a spotlight boring into Maria's very core. "Your condition is unique," Crowe had said, her voice like smooth glass, "but treatable. We'll start with an experimental therapy, an infusion of pharmacological agents paired with some genetic adjustments." Maria had frowned. Genetic adjustments? What does that mean exactly? Crowe smiled, revealing perfectly white teeth, a smile that was just a little too wide. "You'll feel stronger. We're going to unlock parts of your DNA that have remained dormant. Don't worry, you'll be under close observation." Maria wasn't convinced, but desperation had driven her past fear. What was left to lose? The first injection left her dizzy, her vision swimming as chemicals flooded her veins. The days blurred together after that, infusions, pills and injections. She began to feel changes, small at first. Her muscles stopped aching, the constant migraines she had suffered for months dissipated. Her strength returned. The dreams started soon after, vivid nightmares that clung to her even after waking. Dark corridors, screams echoing in the distance, and Crowe was always there, standing at the edge of the dreamscape, her face serene, hands soaked in blood. As the treatments progressed, Maria began to notice changes in the other patients. Some of them were her age, others younger, but they all shared the same hollow look. Yet, beneath their blank stares, something simmered. They spoke in whispers, half-formed sentences about dreams, about violence, about Crowe. One night, after another sleepless few hours punctuated by nightmares, Maria got up and wandered the halls of the clinic. She needed air, needed to think. The medication left her feeling charged, like electricity hummed beneath her skin, but her mind was sharp enough to know that something was wrong. Passing through a hallway near the lab wing, she heard voices through a crack in the door. "Subject 12 is nearing the final stage," one voice said. A man, one of the lab techs. "Her aggression levels are spiking." Crowe's voice cut through the static. "Good. The last injection will finalize the process. We need her to become unhinged. The others have already begun responding as I expected. Violent tendencies, heightened narcissism. It's all falling into place." The man hesitated. "What if she resists? What if—" "She won't. She's already mine." Maria's blood ran cold. What the hell does that mean? She pressed herself against the wall, listening. Once they're complete, the new strain of genetic enhancements will make them capable of unimaginable violence. They'll spread it like a disease, infecting others with their presence alone. This is just the beginning. A sickening wave of dread hit her. The strength, the lack of pain, the euphoria that had been creeping in. It wasn't a cure. It was a transformation. Crowe wasn't treating her. She was turning her into something monstrous. The next morning, Maria confronted Crowe during their session. "What the fuck have you done to me?" Maria spat, her voice shaking with fury. Crowe didn't even flinch. She just smiled that cold, knowing smile. "You're becoming something better, Maria. Your pain is gone, isn't it? You're stronger than you've ever been. What you're feeling now, this rage, is power, raw power. I've given you freedom." Maria slammed her fists onto the desk, hard enough to leave dents in the wood. Her eyes widened. The strength was terrifying. What have they done to me? "This isn't freedom," Maria growled. It's madness. You're making me into a monster." Crowe stood slowly, walking around the desk to stand in front of Maria, her eyes gleaming with something like twisted pride. "You think humanity is noble, pure? They're all monsters, Maria. I'm just stripping away the mask. People are selfish, violent creatures at their core. What I'm doing is simply giving them the tools to embrace their true nature. Think about it. No more weakness, no more pain, just strength." Maria shook her head. "This isn't strength. This is evil." Crowe's smile faltered, replaced by a cold, deadly stare. "Evil is a human construct. This is evolution. You can either accept it or be destroyed by it." "No," Maria whispered. "I won't be part of this." Maria waited until the dead of night. The patients locked in their rooms, the nurses off duty. She had a plan. The rage boiling in her veins was too strong to ignore, and she was going to use it to burn this place to the ground. She crept into the lab, gathering as many vials of chemicals as she could find. There were syringes, tubes filled with the glowing liquid that had been pumped into her and the others. She smashed them against the walls, let them spill onto the floors. Then she heard the footsteps. Crowe stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her face as expressionless as a doll. "I expected more from you, Maria." "Fuck you," Maria spat, holding a scalpel in her hand, her fingers twitching with barely controlled rage. Crowe stepped forward, her voice cold, calculating. "You're not thinking clearly. The treatment is working. You feel it, don't you? The strength, the clarity. You could have been perfect." "I'm not your fucking lab rat," Maria screamed, launching herself at Crowe, the scalpel aimed at her throat. Crowe moved with lightning speed, catching Maria's wrist mid-swing. The scalpel clattered to the floor, and Maria's eyes widened. She hadn't expected Crowe to be that strong. "I'm the one who made you strong, Maria," Crowe hissed, her face inches from Maria's, "and I can break you just as easily." They grappled, Maria's hands closing around Crowe's throat as the doctor smiled, that same infuriating smile that made Maria's blood boil. But Maria wasn't weak anymore. She squeezed, and for a moment, Crowe's smile faltered. "You've forgotten who I am," Crowe wheezed, her nails digging into Maria's wrists. "You've forgotten who you've become." With a surge of adrenaline, Maria shoved Crowe backward, slamming her into the lab coating. Glass vials shattered on impact, spilling chemicals that sizzled against the floor. Crowe's eyes widened in shock, then narrowed with fury. Blood dripped from a gash on her forehead, but she barely seemed to notice. "You don't know what you're doing," Crowe hissed, her voice shaking with suppressed rage. "You're throwing away the future. You could have been perfect." Maria's breathing came in ragged gasps, her heart thundering in her chest. Her fingers throbbed from the pressure she'd applied to Crowe's throat, but that wasn't what was unnerving her. It was the way the violence had felt, natural, almost exhilarating. The strength surging through her was addictive, intoxicating. Crowe straightened up, ignoring the blood trickling down her face. "This is what you are now, Maria. You're stronger, faster, more alive than you've ever been. Every punch, every drop of blood spilled. It's giving you the power you never had before, don't you see it?" "I don't want your power," Maria spat, though part of her knew it was a lie. She could feel the truth gnawing at her insides. There was something primal, something dark that had awakened, and it scared her to her core. Crowe's lips twisted into a smile. "Liar, look at you. You're enjoying this. You're finally free of all that weakness you clung to. This is the real you. Violent. Hungry." Crowe lunged for her again, this time more vicious, more desperate. Maria felt the impact as Crowe's fist collided with her ribs, the force of it sending her staggering back. But the pain didn't register like it used to. It was almost muted. She rebounded faster than she thought possible, her own body now a weapon. They exchanged blows, each punch more brutal than the last. Blood splattered across the room, mixing with the chemicals on the floor, turning the once sterile lab into a battlefield. Crowe was relentless, her movements precise, controlled. But Maria was fighting with something far more savage, pure, unfiltered rage. "You were my greatest creation," Crowe snarled, dodging a swing and driving her fist into Maria's gut. "You could have ruled beside me. You were meant to lead them." "I don't want to lead anyone," Maria growled, slamming Crowe into the table, the doctor's back cracking against the edge. Crowe let out a strangled gasp, her face twisting in pain. Before Crowe could recover, Maria grabbed a shard of broken glass from the floor and plunged it into Crowe's shoulder. Crowe screamed, the sound sharp and raw, echoing through the empty halls. But even as blood gushed from the wound, Crowe's face remained eerily calm. "You're becoming me, Maria," Crowe whispered through the pain, her eyes boring into Maria's. "It's inevitable. The more you fight, the more you'll realize you can't escape it." Maria froze, her hand still gripping the shard embedded in Crowe's flesh. For a second, Crowe's words rang true. Was this who she had become? This strong, violent, twisted reflection of a person she no longer recognized? She felt the pulse of adrenaline in her veins, the seductive pull of power that Crowe had promised. Was this really the price of freedom? Crowe leaned forward, her face inches from Maria's. "Go on, Maria," she whispered, blood staining her teeth. "Finish it. Kill me. Show me that you're ready to embrace it." Maria's grip tightened on the glass shard, her hand trembling. Crowe's breath was hot against her face, and for a brief, terrible moment, Maria imagined herself driving the glass deeper, watching Crowe's life slip away. The thought thrilled her. No. With a guttural cry, Maria yanked the glass out and slammed it down onto the table beside Crowe, shattering it into pieces. She wouldn't do it. She wouldn't become what Crowe wanted. Crowe's smile flickered, her confidence wavering for the first time. "You're a fool," she hissed, eyes narrowing. "You think sparing me makes you any less of a monster? You can't undo what I've started. You're infected, Maria. You'll never be normal again." Maria stepped back, shaking, her breathing heavy. She stared at Crowe, a twisted heap of blood and malice on the floor, and realized something terrible. Crowe was right. This power, this darkness, it wasn't going to leave her. It was inside her now, woven into her very DNA. She had let herself be changed, but that didn't mean she had to be Crowe. She glanced around the lab, her eyes landing on the containers of chemicals lining the shelves, the gas canisters tucked into the corners. An idea sparked in her mind. Dangerous, reckless, but it was the only way to end this nightmare. Crowe noticed her shift in focus. "What are you doing?" she demanded, her voice cracking. "You can't destroy it. You'll die in the process." "That's the idea," Maria muttered under her breath. In a swift motion, she grabbed a gas canister and twisted the valve, letting the contents hiss into the air. She moved quickly, smashing open more vials, letting their contents spill and mix. The acrid stench burned her throat, but she didn't care. She could see Crowe's face shift from smug confidence to panic. "You're insane!" Crowe screamed, struggling to her feet, clutching her wounded shoulder. "You'll kill us both. You'll destroy everything." "That's the point," Maria said coldly, flicking on a lighter she had found on the table. Crowe's eyes widened, genuine fear creeping into her features. "No, you don't have to do this. We can still work together. We can fix this, Maria." "There's nothing to fix," Maria said, her voice low and resolute. "You're right about one thing. You've changed me. But I'll die before I let you do this to anyone else." Before Crowe could move, Maria tossed the lighter into the pool of chemicals. The fire ignited instantly, flames racing across the floor, licking up the walls like a living thing. The heat hit Maria like a wall, scorching her skin. Crowe screamed, backing away, but it was too late. The fire was spreading fast, consuming everything in its path. "You fucking bitch!" Crowe shrieked, trying to make a run for the door, but the flames were already there, blocking her escape. Maria watched as the fire engulfed Crowe, her body writhing in agony, her screams echoing in the burning room. For a moment, Maria just stood there, watching the inferno, feeling the heat sear her lungs. She knew she wouldn't make it out, but there was peace in that knowledge. As the flames closed in, licking at her skin, Maria closed her eyes and whispered, "I'm not you." The world around her became a blur of heat and light, and she let herself go, surrendering to the flames.